So we are back. We'll be starting chapter 5. It's not a long chapter at all. We're going to do half of it. And so this will be in two parts. Chapter 5, part 1, and chapter 5, part 2. The title is The Big Lie. President Nkrumah continues to say this. It has been said that the fabrication of the big lie is essential in the planning of any usurpation of political power. In the case of Ghana, the big lie told to the world was that Ghana needed to be rescued from economic chaos. Various other lies were hinged to this central lie. The country was said to be hopelessly in debt and that the people on the verge of starvation. Among the lies aimed against me personally was the one that I had accumulated a large private fortune. This was to form the basis for an all-out character assassination attempt. But these lies were subsidiary to the one big lie of economic mismanagement, which was to provide an umbrella excuse for the seizure of power by neo-colonialist inspired traders. If Ghana was in such serious economic condition, why was there no lack of investment in her growing industries? Investors do not put their money into mismanaged enterprises and unstable economies. Why did the imperialist powers try to exert an economic squeeze in Ghana? No one in his right mind bothers to attack an already dying concern. Who made up the figures of Ghana's supposed debt? Why was only one side of the ledger shown? Why no mention of assets? How can the obvious evidence of the modernization and industrialization of Ghana, such as the new roads, factories, schools, and hospitals, the harbor, the town of Tema, the Volta and the Tefli bridges, and the Volta Dam be reconciled with the charge of wasted expenditure? If the Ghanaian people were starving, why no evidence of this, and why no popular participation in the coup? How was it that Ghana had the highest living standard in Africa per capita, the highest literacy rate, and was the nearest to achieving genuine economic independence? All these questions and many others related to them are now being asked. An examination of our development plans and of their implementation reveals the truth, that it was their success and not their failure which spurred our enemies into action. Ghana, on the threshold of economic independence, and in the vanguard of the African revolutionary struggle to achieve continental liberation and unity, was too dangerous an example to the rest of Africa to be allowed to continue under a socialist-directed government. In the first 10 years of its administration, the Ghana government drew up the first and second 5-year development plans, 1951 through 56, and 1959 through 1964, and the consolidation plan, which covered the 2-year gap between the two plans, 57 to 59. Under these plans, the foundation were to be laid for the modernization and industrialization of Ghana. A skilled labor force was to be trained, and an adequate complement of public services built up, such as transport, electricity, water, and telecommunications. We had to work fast. Under colonial rule, foreign monopoly interests had tied up our whole economy to suit themselves. We had not a single industry. Our economy was dependent on one cash crop, cocoa. Although our output of cocoa is the largest in the world, there was not a single cocoa processing factory. Before we took office in 1951, there was no direct railway between Accra and Takoradi. In those days, our main port, let me say that again, I apologize. Before we took office in 1951, there was no direct railway between Accra and Takoradi. In those days, our main port. Passengers and freight had to travel by way of Kumasi. This was because Kumasi was the center of the timber and mining industries, both of which served foreign interests and were therefore well supplied with the necessary communications. There were few roads and only a few rudimentary public transport systems. For the most part, people walked from place to place. There were very few hospitals, schools, or clinics. Most of our villages lacked a piped water supply. In fact, the nakedness of the land, when my government began in 1951, has had to have been experienced to be believed. Failure to promote the interests of our people was due to the insatiable demands of colonial exploitation. It was not until we had grasped political power that we were in a position to challenge this and to develop our resources for the benefit of the Ghanaian people. Those who would judge us merely by the heights which we have achieved would do well to remember the depths from which we started. The condition of Ghana in 1964 showed that our first two development plans had been carried out with a high degree of success. We had one of the most modern network of roads in Africa. Takoradi Harbor had been extended, and the great artificial harbor at Tema, the largest in Africa, built from scratch. Large extensions to the supply of water and to the telecommunication network had been constructed, and further extensions were under construction. Our agriculture was being diversified and mechanized. Above all, the Volta River project, which was designed to provide the electrical power for our great social, agricultural, and industrialization program, was almost completed. In education, progress was equally impressive. In 10 years, we had achieved more than in the whole period of colonial rule. The figures below show the great increase in the numbers of children in primary and middle schools, and of students in secondary and technical schools and in colleges of higher education. Now, these are his areas that they worked on: the primary schools, middle schools, secondary and technical schools, teacher training colleges, and university students. The time from 1951 to 61, looking at the primary schools, they started, development in primary schools now. 154,360 students. By 1961, they had developed it so well that they had 481,500 students. Now we're talking about the first and second 5-year development programs and the consolidation plan that I just mentioned earlier. This percentage increase, 211.9%. In the middle schools, during that same time period, 66,175 students. By 1961, the number was 160,000, an increase of 141.7%. Let's go to the secondary and technical schools. In 51, 3,559 students. By 61, 19,143, an increase of 437.8%. Let's go to teacher training colleges. Started out 1951, when they began, 1,916 students. By 1961, 10 years later, 4,552 students, which is an increase of 137.5%. University students, 208 in 1951. By 1961, 1,204 students, an increase of 478.8%. Can anybody in the comment section show an increase of that magnitude or even higher anywhere else in the world, not only during that time frame, but in the entire history of any nation on earth during the same time frame? If anybody can find that, I would like to research that myself. These numbers are incredible. Now, this is socialist development coming right out of colonialism. And keep in mind, the scramble for Africa, where these European countries, including Great Britain, started grasping areas that were their frontiers of raw material production. 1885. So they had a long time to basically rape the continent and subjugate the Africans under colonial government and a European governor that served the British Crown. But in this time, post-colonialism, you can see here that these socialist measures, programs, policies worked. And that's how they're supposed to be applied. But there's more. To continue, the building of schools and colleges was given top priority in our development plans. We took the unprecedented step in Africa of making all education free from primary to university level. In addition, textbooks were supplied free to all pupils in primary, middle, and secondary schools. In the 1964-65 school year, there were 9,988 primary and middle schools with an enrollment of 1,286,486. There were 89 secondary schools with 32,971 pupils, 47 teacher training colleges with an enrollment of 10,168, 11 technical schools, and 3 universities. All this in a population of some 7,500,000. This put Ghana in the lead among independent African states. At the same time, a mass literacy campaign had made Ghana the most literate country in the whole of Africa. A look at some of the other social achievements during the party's first 10 years of office reveals a similar rate of progress. It goes into the basic services like hospital beds, clinics, doctors and dentists, these kinds of things. So what I'll just go over the health, because the areas are health, transport and communication, and electricity. So let's go real quick with health, the number of schools. 1951, 2,368. By 1961, 6,155, an increase of 160%. Rural and urban clinics, 1 throughout the whole country in 1951. By 1961, 30. Doctors and dentists, had only 156 when they started in 1951. By 61, they had 500, 220% increase. Okay, let's go down to electricity, because even through developed countries, there's a problem with 24-hour electricity access, and which baffles me, because Africa on the whole has about 22% of the world's potential for electricity, just not being installed and used. But this is what the Convention People's Party under Nkrumah did. Installed electrical capacity kilowatts they only had 84,708 by 1961, 120,860, increase of 43%. Electrical power, that was the capacity, by the way. Now, the electrical power generated, they had in 1951, 281,983. In 1961, increased to 390,174. 38.4% increase. In 1962, the government adopted what was known as the party's program of work and happiness. It proclaimed our fundamental objective as the building of a socialist state devoted to the welfare of the masses. The concrete program of action for this was worked out in the 7-year development plan launched on 11 March 1964. In presenting the plan to the National Assembly, I said that its main tasks were first, to speed up the rate of growth of our national economy. Secondly, to enable us to embark upon the socialist transformation of our economy through the rapid development of the state and cooperative sectors. Thirdly, to eradicate completely the colonial structure of our economy. The plan embodied measures aimed to achieve a self-sustaining economy founded on socialist production and distribution, an economy balanced between agriculture and industry, providing sufficient food for the people and supporting secondary industries based on the products of our agriculture. Ghana was to be as soon as possible a socialist state. The people, through the state, would have an effective share in the economy of the country and an effective control over it. Thus, the principles of scientific socialism would apply to suit our own particular situation. The party has always proclaimed socialism as its objective, but socialism cannot be achieved without socialists, much hard work and sacrifice, and detailed economic planning to provide a vast improvement in the level of material wealth of the country and distribution of this wealth among its population. It was decided in the 7-year plan that Ghana's economy would, for the time being, remain a mixed one, with a vigorous public and cooperative sector operating alongside the private sector. Our socialist objective demanded, however, that the public and cooperative sectors should expand faster than the private sector, especially those strategic areas of production upon which the economy of the country essentially depended. Various state corporations, and enterprises were to be established as a means of securing our economic independence and assisting in the national control of the economy. They were, like all business undertakings, expected to maintain themselves efficiently and to show profits which could be used for higher investment and to help finance public services. A state management committee was set up to ensure their efficient and profitable management. Many state enterprises were quick to show results. The Ghana National Trading Corporation, GNTC, made a net profit of £4,885,900 in 1965 and had become the largest trading concern in the country. Other state enterprises, by their very nature, took a longer time to develop, and by February 1966 were only just beginning to show a profit. A few, notably in the agricultural sector, were in their infancy and were not expected to yield significant results for some time to come. A certain period of adaptation is necessary for all young industries, particularly in developing countries, where the patterns of production are still mainly agriculture and elementary. But it is noteworthy that the traders of February 1966 found no less than 63 state enterprises which they could put on the market. In our 7-year plan, we recognize the value of foreign investment in the private sector, particularly in the production of consumer goods. The local processing of Ghanaian raw materials and the utilization of Ghana's natural resources in the areas of economic activity where a large volume of investment was required. But we welcomed foreign investors in a spirit of partnership. We did not intend to allow them to operate in such a way as to exploit our people. They were to assist in the expansion of our economy, in line with our general objectives. An agreed portion of their profits being allocated to promote the welfare and happiness of the Ghanaian people. The state retained control of the strategic branches of the economy, including public utilities, raw materials, and heavy industry. The state also participated in light and consumer goods industries in which the rates of return of capital were highest. We intended that those industries which provided the basic living needs of the people should be state-owned in order to prevent any exploitation. It was estimated that during the 7 years, there could be a total expenditure of about £1 billion. Total government investment in the plan itself was to be £476 million. Foreign investors, individual Ghanaians, local authorities, and the cooperative sector were expected to invest more. Ghanaians, it was hoped, would contribute nearly £100 million of direct labor in the construction of buildings, in community development, and in the extension of their farms. Special attention was given to the modernizing of agriculture so that a greater yield and a diversity of crops could be produced. We needed to produce more food locally so that we could reduce our imports of foodstuffs and at the same time improve the health of the people by increasing the protein content in the average diet. Most developing countries face nutritional problems of one kind or another. In our case, the great need was to have more fish and meat to provide a properly balanced diet. We plan to increase the output of fish from an estimated 70,000 tons in 1963 to 250,000 tons in 1969. Livestock production, including poultry and eggs, was to increase from some 20,000 tons to 38,000 tons. Immediate steps were taken to expand the fishing fleet and develop fish processing and marketing facilities. We bought 29 fishing trawlers from Russia. The immense man-made lake formed as part of the Volta River project was being stocked with fish, and this too was about to bring a big improvement in the diet of the Ghanaian people. As for meat and poultry, the government subsidized the development of many poultry farms and the rearing of large herds of cattle. In colonial days, fresh meat, milk, and eggs were available to Europeans only. Before the setback of February 1966, however, they were becoming part of the regular diet of the Ghanaian people. The task of correcting the imbalance in our food economy was regarded as the greatest challenge to the agriculture sector of the plan. Far-reaching schemes were initiated for major improvements in irrigation and water conservation in the northern and upper regions of Ghana. Peasant farmers throughout the country were informed that they would be able to make use of the agricultural machinery of state and cooperative farms. It was not the government's intention to squeeze out the peasant farmer. Far from it. We needed the maximum effort of every individual farmer if we were to achieve our agricultural targets. During the period of the plan, Ghana's production of raw materials was to be considerably increased. Cocoa, our main export, earned the country £1,680,000 between 1951 and 1961. Of this, the farmers received 1 million, and the remainder was used by the government and the Cocoa Marketing Board for maintaining public services and for the general development of the country. We increased our cocoa production from 264,000 tons in 1956-57 to 590 tons in 1963-64. And huge silos had been built, able to store half the cocoa crop to enable us to restrict exports and to assure a fair price for our cocoa in the world market. Plans were also far advanced to increase exports of timber and to develop new species of wood for buildings, furniture, and other wood products, and for use in paper factories. Efforts were being made to revive our once flourishing export crop of palm oil. Rubber production was being increased. In the western region, a vast new plantation, 18 miles long, had been sown. Within 2 or 3 years, Ghana was to be one of the greatest rubber producers in Africa. The production of palm oil, cotton, sugarcane, and tobacco was being stepped up. By 1970, there were to be 4 factories in operation producing 100,000 tons of sugar a year, more than sufficient to eliminate the item from our list of imports. Greatest of all our development projects was the Volta Dam. When the 7-year plan was launched, the Volta project was expected to begin to generate electrical power by September 1965. Completion of the project would enable us to develop the full industrial potential of Ghana. It would increase by nearly 600% the installed electrical capacity of the country. Nearly 1/2 of this new capacity would be taken up by the aluminum smelter in Tema. It is estimated that Ghana has sufficient bauxite to last for 200 years. But apart from this, the Volta project would have an ample reserve of power for other users, and Ghana would have liberated herself decisively from the possibility of a power shortage being a brake on the rate of economic progress. Construction targets for the various parts of the Volta River project were achieved, some of them ahead of schedule, and the official inauguration ceremony took place on 23rd January 1966. At the time, building was about to start on a large subsidiary dam at Wee. Plans were also well advanced for the construction of an alumina plant, which would have given Ghanaians control of the whole process of aluminum production. As it was, we were exporting bauxite to the United Kingdom for processing, while we were importing alumina manufactured in the United States from bauxite mined in Jamaica for our aluminum smelter. Now let me just ask the question here. Based on what I just read, let me just read this again. Then I'm going to put a question in. To this question I'll ask, I would like somebody to try to answer this, if they can. As it was, we were exporting bauxite to the United Kingdom for processing, while we were importing alumina manufactured in the United States from bauxite mined in Jamaica for our aluminum smelter. Now, in terms of production, distribution, and export, what kind of sense does that make when they knew, even through colonial times, Ghana had the bauxite to produce their own aluminum, which is what the Convention People's Party did in their industrialization plans? I mean, it just, they not only want your the resources, but they want to distribute them as they think to you. When there was no need to buy aluminum from the United States, that was ridiculous. All right, I think y'all get the point. Let me continue. In keeping with my government's policy of linking Ghana Ghana's in keeping with my government's policy of linking Ghana's progress with Africa's total development, provision was made in the plan for economic cooperation with other African states. As I said in my address to the National Assembly on 11 March 1964, quote, "While we wait for the setting up of a union government for Africa, we must begin immediately to harmonize our plans for Africa's total development. For example, I see no reason why the independent African states should not, with advantage to each other, join together in an economic union and draw up together a joint development plan which will give us greater scope and flexibility to our mutual advantage. By the same token, I see no reason why the independent African states should not have common shipping and airlines in the interest of improved services and economy. With such rationalization of our economic policies, we could have common objectives and thus eliminate unnecessary competition and frontier barriers and disputes." End quote. When in fact, I inaugurated the completed Poultry River project on 23rd January 1966, I said, quote, "We are ready and prepared to supply power to our neighbors in Togo, Dahomey, Ivory Coast, and Upper Volta. As far as I am concerned, this project is not for Ghana alone. Indeed, I have already offered to share our power resources with our sister African states." End quote. On that day, at Okosombo, some 60 miles northeast of Accra, when I switched on illuminating lights signifying the official opening of hydroelectric power from the Volta, one of my greatest dreams had come true. I had witnessed the wide-scale electrification of Ghana and the breakthrough into a new era of economic and social advance. The Volta Dam permitted not only a large aluminum plant at Tema, processing the country's rich bauxite deposits, but a broad range of other industrial projects. The initial power output is 512 kilowatts, and the ultimate power output will be 768,000 at full load. There are 500 miles of transmission lines. The main grid carries 161,000 volts. The water building up behind the dam is forming the largest man-made lake in the world. It will cover an area of 3,275 square miles with a capacity of 120 million acre-feet of water, and will be 250 miles long with a shoreline of 4,500 miles. Approximately 80,000 people had to be moved from the area submerged by the lake. This necessitated the construction of 50 new villages and towns to accommodate them, the provision of modern housing, schools, piped water, electricity, medical facilities, and new forms of employment. Thousands of acres of land had to be cleared, and the people settled on farms and small holdings with up-to-date methods of cultivation and animal husbandry. All this was achieved. The creation of the Volta Lake had already provided facilities for an important freshwater fishing industry. The Volta River contained numerous excellent indigenous fish, and research had shown which fish to breed to increase the supply and how to control weed growth. The number of ports and fishing villages being formed around the lakeside provide bases for cheap means of transport from the north to the south of Ghana. Furthermore, the lake forms a vast reservoir, making possible the improvement of water supplies to towns and villages and the irrigation of land for agriculture. The national seasonal fluctuation in the level of the lake will immediately affect 650 square miles of land, permitting the cultivation of rice and other crops. Lake Volta was also to be developed as a holiday and tourist attraction. Ghanaians are justifiably proud that their own government provided 35 million pounds, that is, half of the cost of the Volta River project, as well as meeting the cost of the new port and township of Tema, which was an essential part of the scheme. The balance of 70 million pounds was required was to be raised by international loans. Incidentally, there's some numbers, by the way, of the international loans. But let me just move on here. Incidentally, at a time when our distractors talk much of bribery and corruption in the developing countries, it is noteworthy that not a single penny went astray or was misappropriated in the entire Volta undertaking, which involved countless contracts over many years. Apart from completing the Volta River project, the 7-year development plan provided for certain further improvements in the physical services. These were mostly intended to improve upon the existing system of transport, communications, water supply, and electricity services in order to make them fully capable of supporting the proposed level of industrial and agricultural development. A considerable proportion of the increase in material wealth that was expected to accrue to the country during the 7 years of the plan's operation was to be used to promote public welfare services. Education, the health services, and housing were all to benefit. As far as health services were concerned, the plan proposed to change the main orientation, which had hitherto been more curative than preventative. Rural health services were developed in such a way that the rate of infant mortality was lowered and the maternity and postnatal care improved. The main cause of poor health in Ghana is the prevalence of endemic diseases such as malaria. The plan put emphasis on the fight against these endemic diseases. New regional hospitals, equipped with all specialist facilities, were under construction at Tamale and other areas of the country. Also, existing hospitals were being improved. Arrangements have been made to build 6 new district hospitals and 4 more urban polyclinics to assist in the decentralization of outpatient work. In addition, 5 new mental hospitals with accommodation for 1,200 patients were designed to be ready by 1970. They were to be backed up by psychiatric units providing treatment for as many mental patients as possible. The urgent need for more doctors was being met by sending Ghanaian medical students to study abroad and by the setting up of our own medical school. In 1962, 51 pre-med students were enrolled at the University of Ghana. When our own medical school is functioning fully, it will be empowered to provide a screening system for all doctors trained abroad who wish to practice in Ghana. The medical program under the 7-year development plan was intended to achieve these following ratios: 1 doctor to 10,000 people, 1 nurse to 5,000 patients, including patients in public health centers, 1 technician laboratory x-ray to 5,000 patients, 1 health inspector to 15,000 people, 1 health auxiliary, vaccinations, dressing room attendants, etc. to 1,000 people. A large network of health centers was being built all over Ghana to serve the rural population, and regional health officers were being provided with training and facilities to enable them to carry out their important work. The only nursing school which existed in 1945 produced only 8 nurses a year by 1950. In 1961-62, 6 schools of nursing turned out 265 new nurses and midwives. Perhaps the most outstanding contribution in public health has come from the medical field unit. This unit was formed to seek out and control diseases and viruses. It has been successful in containing them. It has also carried out a massive vaccination program and played a leading role in the control of epidemics, cerebral spinal meningitis, and others. It is currently active actively engaged in combating malaria, leprosy, and tuberculosis. In launching the 7-year development plan, with all its detailed programs for our country's economic and social progress, I warned about the existence of Ghanaian private enterprises in our midst. It was necessary, I told members of the National Assembly, to distinguish between the two types of businesses which had grown up in recent years. The first was a type which it was the government's intention to encourage, that of the small businessman, who employed his capital in an industry trade with which he was familiar and which fulfilled a public need. The second consisted of that class of Ghanaian businesses which were modeled on the old colonial pattern of exploitation. In this category were those who used their capital not in productive endeavor, but to purchase and resell at high prices commodities such as salt, fish, and other items of food and consumer goods which were in demand by the people. This type of business served no social purpose, and steps would be taken to see that the nation's banking resources were not used to provide credit for them. Even more harmful to the economy was another type of enterprise which some Ghanaians had been participating in. This was the setting up of bogus agencies for foreign companies who were in fact nothing more than organizations for distributing bribes and for exerting improper pressures on behalf of foreign companies. The government intended to carry out a thorough investigation into these activities of these agencies and to suppress them. The initiative of Ghanaian businessmen would not be cramped, but we intended to take steps to see that it was channeled toward the desirable social ends and was not expended in the exploitation of the community. We would discourage anything which threatened our socialist objectives. For this reason, no Ghanaian would be allowed to take up shares in any enterprise under foreign investment. Instead, our people would be encouraged to save by investing in the state sector and cooperative undertakings. We'll stop it there for now. Put a pin in it for next time. And so far, you can see that these socialist programs had a high degree of success. Give me your thoughts on this. This is a very important chapter in the book, which proves socialism works under the right conditions, and if you had the right commitment and right planning and execution. So I want to thank you again for listening as always. I appreciate you. Please let me know your thoughts on this. And as always, I'll see you next time.